Hello, and welcome to another What's Up Missoula show where MCAT interviews representatives from local nonprofits. And today we have with us Chuck Jonkel, who is the president of the Great Bear Foundation. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Well, nice to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so today you told me you wanted to talk about bears and apples. And so I know that your Great Bear Foundation really looks over the welfare of bears and studies bears, and you have lots of students coming through. And we'll be flashing the address up on the screen. And you told me you welcome people to come on, stop on by.
Yep, our door's open, and we've been for a long time now, 2 months, we've been picking apples and asking people to come by and help us. And we've had probably 30 or 40 volunteers that come and helped us. We've literally picked up thousands and thousands of pounds of apples and hundreds of pounds of plums and grapes and all that sort of thing, pears. The idea is that, you know, there are a lot of bears in Missoula. My son Jamie, who's with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, is a bear and mountain lion biologist, and he figured there's around 20 bears inside the Missoula city limits at any given time this time of year. A lot of them are in rattlesnake, and a lot of them have a tendency to get in trouble with people because there's so much food. This year was a really good apple year, and the trees were just hung like that with apples. And the natural bear foods were okay down low, but they weren't real good at mid elevations and not much at all at high elevations. So we got a lot of bears in town this year, and what happens is if they get into the apples, then they get used to people, then they get into the bird feeders, then they get into garbage, and at some point somebody complains, and then the agencies remove them. And first few times they might just get moved, but at some point they start killing them if they return and there's complaints. And my son does a lot of that, and he don't like to kill bears. And so what we try to do is reduce the problems. We try to get the apples away from the fringe areas of town so that the bears don't head down that road, becoming an urban animal. They become an urban animal, they get too comfortable with people, and pretty soon they're in the garbage, and then the bird feeders, and then the garage, and then somebody calls the state, and they come and haul them away. It's not good for the bears. It's poor management, and it's something that isn't really good, that Missoula shouldn't be letting it happen. There is a new ordinance now. It'll be kicking in, and it'll be much stronger. There are going to be tickets handed out starting next year and such. Under that new ordinance, people have got to help more, and people got to work at this, because it's ending up right now with a lot of dead bears that didn't do anything wrong. Except, you know, they took advantage of food that people were careless with, and it's inevitable that it goes that way. And so what we do with the Great Bear Foundation is we try to head off the problem as much as we can, get the apples out of there so the bears don't get used to people, don't get used to coming around houses and such, and thereby don't get into trouble and don't have to be killed. So
you're looking for volunteers also to help to pick those apples? And
yeah, it's about over now. It's you know, it's early November now. There's still a few varieties of apples that are hanging on. The Jonathans and the McIntosh are still hanging on some trees yet, but most of the fruit is gone. But the bears just move deeper into the city. If they've gotten familiar with people, then they get what apples are left deeper in the city, and they get into garbage and dog food and bird feeder food and you know, all those things would cause them to get killed eventually.
But it's mostly the fruit on the trees that attracts them.
Well, yeah, and where we concentrate on is along the edges of town, so that the bears don't come in and get some free food. So we try to clean those apples out first, so it doesn't trigger this kind of a sequence.
So you just go knocking on doors and tell them what you're doing?
Yeah, we've got a lot of the trees identified now. We know where they are. We know the people, and we come by and leave a leaflet and say, hey, we'd like to pick the apples again, get them out of here so they don't tempt the bears into coming into town. And most of the homeowners are very cooperative, and some of them even join Great Bear Foundation and such as a result. They appreciate what we're doing. They know they've got a problem. They don't get around to solving it, and we come and solve the problem for them. And it works nice for the kids. A lot of the people who help us with the project are university kids, because our office is right across the river from the university, and they love all the apples for eating, for pies, and we have a cider press there, and they can make, squeeze the juice out of the apples, and they have a lot of fun. They learn some principles about living with wildlife, and they make the whole thing happen, because it is kind of hard work and time-consuming work to do all that fruit collection.
So what is the ordinance going to say next year?
Well, the ordinance will be after people who are careless next end with the garbage, because what happens, the bears get into the apples or the plums or whatever, and then they come closer into town, and they get into the bird feeders, and then pretty soon they're into the garbage,
Right.
And then pretty soon they're into the garage, and the garden house and such, and by then people start complaining, and then the bear gets dead, and so we try to stop that process from happening.
So what will the ordinance say? It'll say to pick your fruit, or watch your garbage, or keep your garage doors closed?
Yeah, it'll allow
Yeah.
it'll allow the bear people to actually give tickets. If they'll get warnings, clean up your garbage. If not, they'll get tickets and such. Alaska just has instituted really strong statewide law on this. They've got even worse problems with urban wildlife in Alaska, and they've got some really good legislation just very recently. And the Missoula ordinance is very recent. It really won't kick in until next year. There'll be a lot of educational programs along with it, so people know what this new responsibility they have about.
I noticed that there were so many deer downtown this year. It's really been quite a lot in the last few years. Is there anything people can do about that?
Well, it's the same problem to a degree. Apples tempt the deer in, too. We have a lot more urban deer, though, than we do urban bears.
Oh, yeah. There's so many.
Jamie, my son, figured there's around 600-800 deer in Missoula, and maybe 20 or more bears at any given time in Missoula. The thing about the deer is, people love to watch them and see them, but then they get hit by cars, and of course, in a rare case, they can get aggressive and harmful towards people, too.
I remember one attacked a lady about a year ago.
Yeah, but the bears are much bigger potential for trouble, and we're interested in bears, so we do this primarily for the bears, but it helps solve the deer problem in town to a degree, too. We especially get the apples away from where the busy streets are, like Rattlesnake Drive and such, because there the deer and the bears are much more likely to get whacked by automobiles at nighttime. There's a lot of deer and a lot of bears killed inside city limits in Missoula by vehicle accidents every year.
Yeah. So tell me about some of your school programs that you're doing. What are you doing nowadays?
It's oriented mostly to just teaching the kids about bears, but also about how to live in, as a kid in Montana.
So these are elementary school?
Especially elementary. We do some high school, and we do lectures on campus, and and we do a lot of field courses too. But most all winter long, we do programs mostly at the primary school level, and explaining to people, to the kids, all ages, how to tell the difference between bears and wolves and dogs and cats, and to learn the tracks, to learn the habits of the animals, to learn the kinds of things that can be dangerous to kids, whether it's mountain lions or bears. and how to stay out of trouble and be more aware of wildlife. So we give kind of a short course on bear management. In fact, we're doing about 5 hours of it today at Meadow Hill School, and key to bear management and bear problems and bear people behaviors and problems, and we do that all winter long, going to schools all over western Montana.
Do you bring them photographs or film or?
We bring a whole bunch of show and tell. We bring bear hides, and we bring plaster casts of tracks, and bring a bunch of literature that the kids can pick up, and we bring old research materials like snares, foot snares, and we bring skulls and talk about the difference between the teeth in the bears and the mountain lions, and how mountain lions are quite dangerous to people because they're the super predator, and they live right in Missoula also. They don't like to be seen, so not many people realize there are mountain lions in town, but mountain lions are dangerous to small people. Well, primary great kids are small people, and so we teach them how to recognize the tracks and the claw marks on trees and things like that, so that they can be more aware living in Missoula with grizzly bears, black bears, mountain lions, potentially right in their yard, or certainly where they're camping, or where they have a cabin in the woods, or if they're a little older and they go hunting, we teach them how to deal with bears in that sense too.
I remember I was stalked by a big male, very elderly mountain lion up Patty Canyon. The reason I know that is because the next day Fish and Game called me and said, we think we found him. He was killed on Route 200 by a truck. But because when I was in such a panic, he stalked me all the way down until I got into my car. Basically, he kept showing himself to me. And it was interesting because the guy that I talked to on the phone said, what I did have a tree branch. I picked that up because I saw the gods must be crazy too. That's the only reason I knew. I try to make yourself bigger than the animal and scare him. So I picked up a tree branch. I was so scared. But he told me, if he did actually come towards you, you could hold that tree branch between you and him, because mountain lions don't like to be confronted. And you could probably hold him at bay and chase him away with that big, it was a big branch, so.
Well, mountain lions are something pretty serious that people in western Montana, especially kids, need to know about and be careful. They can be dangerous. They do prey on people, small people, and generally they stay hidden. People don't know they're around, but they're very effective in what they do and can be very dangerous to small people. Well,
he said that the mountain lion kept showing himself to me broadside, so I'd see how big he was, scaring me to death. And the Fish and Wildlife guy said, well, that's because he's probably old and can't chase deer anymore, and so he's kind of desperate and he's just trying to scare you, which is exactly what happened. But I didn't run. He said, you didn't run, did you? I said no, but I was like shaking. But well, those are great lessons. We do live right in the middle of wilderness. This is just a town sitting in the middle of it, so I'm so glad you do that. So anyway, you have a polar bear class you're going to be conducting, so let's talk about that.
Well, I did polar bear research for many years for the Canadian government, and so I still take classes up to Hudson Bay every year. I take kids' trip up in August to see polar bears and whales. And
Hudson Bay is where?
In north central Canada, straight north of the Great Lakes.
Okay.
There's that huge body of water called Hudson Bay. And we go to the west shore of Hudson Bay. And there's a place there where polar bears congregate in the fall. They want to get out on the ice, and that's where the ice forms first. That's what their food, where their food is, out on the ice, the ringed seal. They want to get out there. So they come to Cape Churchill. Well, that brings them right through Churchill. And so it's a great place to see polar bears very easily. And I did a lot of research there. I know the area well, and I know polar bears well. So since 1984, I've been taking classes up there every year. I take a kid trip in August, and then a regular trip for anybody, kids or adults.
How many people
And
usually go with you?
well, in the kids trip, we keep it small, less than 10, because kids are harder to keep track of. And but with the fall trip, we like to take anywhere 30 to 40 people. We have about 35 this year, and take them up. They see the bears, they see their own polar bears, but we teach them a lot about the Hudson Bay lowlands and the climate and all sorts of aspects of polar bear ecology. Meet local people and see how people live there. We interact a great deal with people on the train. The last day of going to Churchill is on the train. Great way to lecture because because of the permafrost, the train goes real slow, so I can teach people the plants and tracks and such right from the train. And then at Churchill, we do a lot of lectures every night about the Arctic and about polar bears, and during daytime. And everybody wants to see some polar bears, so we drive around, watch polar bears, and watch them hunt, and watch them sleep, and watch them walk around, sniffing this and that. And it's very, very educational, but it's also a great trip. It's so great that a lot of people are making a lot of money on it. We don't do it. We do it as a class, and we know a little bit more than break even on it. But some of the big tour companies in the world make millions of dollars literally hauling people up there to see the polar bears, going everything first class, We do it cheap as possible and certainly not first class. But
How do you get them there? Is it a caravan of cars and you drive?
now, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been working with Saley's Kootenai College, and we take one of their buses,
that's great.
Greyhound-type bus,
Good.
and I'll do lectures all the way up until we get on the train. The highway doesn't go all the way to Churchill, so on the last lap we have to do on the train, but it's a kind of neat old-fashioned train that pokes along 5 miles to 30 miles an hour and stops at almost every creek and every lake to let people on and off. And we can see the land, we can see the vegetation, and meet people, trappers and fishermen, and such, getting on the train, going to the nearest town. And
How long does it take to drive from here to there?
it's a long way. It's where we cut the train is a little town called DePauw, Manitoba.
Yeah.
And the railroad comes up out of Winnipeg. Some people from the east get on in Winnipeg. We meet them the next morning in DePauw, because the train comes the closest to Missoula. It's about like from here to Fargo, North Dakota.
So it's about 2 days?
It's a day and a half, trip to get there, and then it's a day on the train. And but we do lectures and stops all along the way. And on the train stops every once in a while, or quite frequently. They have smoke breaks and all that. And so we can get to know the land and look for tracks and such right from the train. I do a lot of lectures right on the train, too.
So people are taking all the photographs they want, or video camera, they can use that. And do they sleep on the bus and then the train? Or?
We do a lot of sleeping on the buses and on the trains. We have good accommodations up there, and we do spend one night in a motel traveling, just so people can get a good night's rest.
And they bring all their food with them?
We bring a lot of food along, and cut our costs that way. We cut our costs by driving ourselves. We cut our costs by going by train rather than plane, and we cut our costs by staying at the Churchill Northern Study Center rather than hotels and such. Educational groups can stay out there. That means you have to help with the cooking, you have to help cleaning rooms and washing the dishes and all that sort of thing. We rent vehicles and drive our own selves around. Keep it cheap. The idea is have it reasonable enough that anybody can go up and see the polar bears by going with us. The tour outfits might a lot of them charge around $4,000 to $5,000 now. We can do it for around $1,500, $1,600, something like that. Well, that's a lot of money, but it's nothing compared to $4,000. If and rich people can do that. They can go on a tour. If you don't have money, you can go with us and help with the work and see it too. We purposely do it that way to allow people who are never going to get to go see polar bears, but want to see polar bears. This way they can go. And we've been doing it since '84, and we've probably more people from Montana that have seen polar bears up at Churchill and are from Manitoba. Churchill is in Manitoba, but
how long are they gone from the time they leave Missoula?
It's 9 days.
That's all?
9 days. Missoula back to Missoula.
All right. So when they are looking at the polar bears, how far away are the bears?
Well, sometimes they're looking in the window of the bus, like 6 inches from your nose. We don't like them to do that, but a lot of them have learned bad habits towards the vehicles there. A lot of people aren't careful. We try to do is spot them some distance off and just watch them without disturbing them and see what they do. And if they're sleeping and you get tired of watching them, after an hour we go look for another bear. And they'll be hunting and they'll be walking along sniffing things. And we like to see them doing things and see them under, the ones that go out on the ice and the ones that are sleeping in snowdrifts. And we look at the tracks a lot and beds where they've been sleeping. Everybody can crawl in a polar bear bed and try it out. And when the bear's gone.
They lie down in where the bear just lie down, you mean?
Yeah, it's how people like to do that sort of thing. And, it gives you a feel for a bear.
What it's like. So what are the temperatures there when you go there?
Well, it's winter, but it's early winter. And we usually have, we're there 5 days and 4 nights. And we usually have about 2 days that are pretty nice. And the light's good and people can get a lot of photographs and such. And then we have 2 days that are marginal, and then quite often we have at least 1 day that you don't do much because of the whiteout situation.
Have you ever been in a situation where it was dangerous? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, we rent buses up there, and the bus might hold 40 people, but you have to get in one at a time, and so we have to be extremely careful when we have people get out of the bus to photograph and film and to watch the bears, and we have to make a call when the bears are. If they're coming our way, we have to be ready to get everybody loaded up and such. Bears didn't used to be aggressive towards people. There are a few now, just like we have some bears in Montana that are now aggressive towards people. They didn't used to be. They used to be, all of them, pretty well afraid of people. But there are some bears now in Montana that I wouldn't trust, and there are also a few polar bears now that I wouldn't trust.
What causes that phenomenon?
Well, just too much contact with people or inappropriate contact. There have been cases where people have been feeding them with large cans and sandwiches from the tundra buggies and such, and the bears learn bad habits, and then we come along and the bears want to do things we don't want them to do, and we don't, we try to head that off and not let that happen.
Have you seen a change in the environment up there with, like, effects from global warming?
Well, right off the top, we're leaving on the 9th. We used to leave in October. And we're back home by this time. But we keep moving the class later and later. We're doing it about 2 weeks later than we used to, just since '84.
Okay. Well, so have any of the bear behavior been affected by global warming? Or I noticed that now they are actually using a polar bear in the global warming posters to show. They're just these sweet photos of. So they're being really, really affected by it.
They really are, and we've been trying real hard to get the polar bear to be the kind of the poster child for global warming, because they are getting hurt already. There are polar bears, and in the Arctic there are people who are dying from global warming. There are polar bears that are dying from global warming.
How are people dying from global warming?
Well, they go out to hunt where they've always hunted and where their fathers hunted and their grandfathers hunted, and then they can't get back.
Yeah.
The water opens up and there's no ice, and there they are with the dog team, and they're 200 miles from home, can't get across the water, and get stranded out there, and it can be quite dangerous. And there's a lot of ways people can get in trouble now, because there are rainstorms, freezing rain in the winter, which never used to happen. And the storms are far more dangerous, and the ice is far more dangerous. And there are some people who are actually getting hurt from the global warming already. The Arctic is a lot like the canary in the mine. The things that are drastic towards people are already starting to happen in the Arctic. Here we know it's coming our way, and we have summers like last summer, which was not a Montana summer.
No, 107 or something one day, yeah.
I'm still waiting for summer, because there was no typical summer. Well, now it's almost snow time. But the impacts are greater in the Arctic.
Are they experiencing high winds also?
Well, it's not the high winds so much as the moisture. And what's happening is the jet stream is carrying all the climates farther north before they turn inland. And so Alaska and the Arctic are getting hit real hard with air that comes from India, China, and Japan, goes up and hits Alaska, and it tears right across the high Arctic, and it's bringing warming trends. So the Arctic is melting, but it's also bringing a lot of air pollution to the Arctic that never used to happen. Our climate used to be typical Montana climate. It came in out of the northwest, off the Pacific coast of Washington and British Columbia. Now the weather is being carried much farther north, so Montana weather is going clear up to Alaska and then heading inland and hitting North Dakota. And we're getting Arizona weather. That's why we didn't have a Montana summer last summer. We had an Arizona summer with thunderstorms late in the afternoon and such, and much warmer. And it's because of that climate change, and that there's just huge mass of air is moving straight up to the Arctic and taking our weather along with it.
Well, that's a very clear explanation for what's going on and how it's happening. Are you explaining all these things to your classes and your that's great.
Yeah, we do lectures on that. We do some of it even in grade school classes. I got a bunch of the 7th graders all hooped up about global warming this morning at Meadow Hill School, that, it's already hurting animals, so it's already hurting people.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Chuck.
Okay.
Our time is already up, and it's always a joy to have you on. I wanted to mention, though, you have your PhD in wildlife biology, is that correct?
It's in zoology with a wildlife emphasis from the University of British Columbia.
Okay. Well, thanks so much.
Okay.
I sure appreciate your coming on the show.
I'm ready to talk about bears anytime.
I can see that.
Okay.
Thank you.